Is your practice tired of wrestling with insurance denials, deciphering EOBs, and watching your revenue slip through the cracks? You are not alone. Welcome to The Claim Game, the podcast designed to cut through the confusion and provide you with the best practices for revenue cycle management success. We are Jeremy and Catherine Zug, and we've been with people just like you in the trenches. Each week, we'll break down complex billing processes, share real-world solutions from practices like yours, and ask questions of the game makers and changers of healthcare so you can take control of your revenue. Let's turn those claim denials into deposits and help you return to focusing on patient care. It's time to win the claim game.
Hey everyone, welcome back to The Claim Game. I'm your host, Jeremy Zug. As a reminder, Catherine is currently out on maternity leave. And if you've been following along this season, you know that we are systematically conquering revenue cycle management best practices, one territory at a time. And last time we talked, we discussed remittances and portals. And today we're going to move on to what is probably the most frustrating part about taking insurance and the most frustrating part of payment posting, which is our current domain, and that's going to be denials. It's the moment that you do all of the work in billing and you get to that point and you open your computer and you notice a big fat zero waiting for you. And I want you to picture this, right? Maybe you don't have to imagine it. Maybe you're living this. Maybe it happened to you today. You've done all the work, right? You did credentialing. You've nailed patient registration, you have perfect clinical notes, you submitted the claims on time, and you finally land in payment posting, open your EHR up, open up your email, and you're expecting the payment that's on your contract, your allowed amount. And instead, you see zero. And the denial, the dreaded denial, is painful. Now, most providers treat that zero like a dead end and like failure. They sigh, they throw their hands up and they think, well, I lost this time. I guess we'll either keep going or they burn out. And I just want to let you know that in the claim game, this scenario is full of clues. That $0 is not a dead end. It's actually just data. And if you can't read the data, if you don't have the right tools, the right compass that points north, you're not going to be able to work your way through finding the treasure. And this is also a moment for self-reflection. If that is a scenario that you're currently living in and that is causing too much weight on you, I want you to consider whether or not working with insurance is right for you, because this is part and parcel of playing this game. And it's got to be one of the hardest things to deal with in private practice or while you're running your agency. So today we're going to talk about recording denials and decoding denials. So we're going to teach you how to read the secret language on your remittances and in your portals. We're going to talk about CARCs and RARCs, all kinds of things so that you can stay in this game and be sustainable and continue to run a sustainable, financially healthy private practice. I'm also going to be opening up the toolbox today, and we'll be referencing two specific tools that we've developed for you in the Hourglass Learning Hub, which is the payment posting guide and the claim management spreadsheet. We use both of these two tools every single day at Practice Solutions. Our army of billers use both of those. We've decided to give you access to those through the Learning Hub. So if you have access to the hub and you want to pull those up, you can. That'll make this episode a little bit easier. And if not, don't worry. We're going to walk you through exactly how they work. So here's our roadmap for the next few minutes while we talk. First, we're going to explain why you must physically record a denial. You can't just gloss over it. You can't be overwhelmed by it. It's not a dead end. It's just data. Next, we're going to hand you the key to decode those confusing letter and number combinations using the payment posting guide. And finally, we're going to talk about how to stop making the same mistakes by using the claim management spreadsheet that we've developed over the last decade and we continue to use day in and day out. So we hope you're ready to jump into this episode. And we're going to start with the basics. So when I talk about recording denials, I can already hear some of you just sighing or rolling your eyes thinking of Sarah or whoever you work with. If you're doing your own billing at night, for example, after seeing patients all day, you look at a portal, you see a little red flag that says the claim wasn't paid, and you say, I know it was denied, I see it right there. Why do I need to spend valuable time entering what is essentially a $0 payment record into my EHR? Isn't that just busy work? It feels like I'm writing a receipt for my own failure, which is how it feels. I completely understand that. And I hear you on that. And I feel it feels like adding insult to injury. But the answer is that it's not a receipt for your own failure. It's not busy work. In fact, it's actually the anchor to your practice or your agency on the road to resolving these kinds of issues, these denials. So I want you to think about your electronic health record, your EHR, or whatever billing system you're using, like a ship's log, right? If you don't record the denial, your log is still telling you that the ship is out to sea, sailing smoothly, and your system still thinks that that money is pending, that there's still hope or waiting to be done before revenue hits your bank. But in reality, that ship has already crashed on the shore. That ship is not doing well. And we need to face the brutal facts. We need to look at what the reality is. So if you don't post a $0 payment, that claim sits in your system, really inflating your accounts receivables. And you might look at your monthly report and think, oh, great, I have $5,000 coming in from Blue Cross. You make hiring decisions based on that number. You might buy new laptops on that number. But in reality, Blue Cross has already said no to $3,000, right? And you end up creating something of a ghost in your financial system. That money looks alive on paper, but is actually kind of dead in the water. And you know exactly what I'm going to say is true. You can't really run your practice or your agency on ghost money. You need to know what actual money is likely coming in. So, and when I say post that money, what I don't mean is post it so it goes away. I mean, document that $0 on the claim management spreadsheet so that you know what to follow up on. And then you also need to indicate that that denial exists in your EHR system so that you know what you're looking at. There's also a second reason, and this is even more practical than knowing what your cash flow looks like, but really you need to know what the appeal clock is on your claims, right? Each insurance company has a deadline for when you can appeal a claim. So it's something of a timely filing for appeals. Sometimes it's 90 days, sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes it's longer than that. If you leave your claim sitting in a like pending status because you didn't record the denial date, then your system, your internal workflow doesn't know that the clock has started. The claim's just sitting there aging. And by the time you realize it's been denied, 95 days have passed, and then it's game over. You legally can't collect that money and you can't do anything to rectify the issue. So step one on this square of the game board is purely psychological. Acknowledge the loss, record the 0 on your claim management spreadsheet, and start the clock. You have to close the loop on that first attempt before you can launch the second attempt, right? So, okay, you've documented the denial on your claim management spreadsheet. You're looking at this. And so now you need to know what the payment posting guide is for a $0 payment, right? And I recognize that this takes a fair amount of bravery to be able to do, right? You're looking at an EOB or an ERA, which the last episode covered, and it's rarely says something helpful like, hey, you forgot the modifier on line 2. Your EOB, your ERA is not going to be that clear, right? Instead, your EOB or ERA is going to look something like alphabet soup, something like CO45 or PR1 or CO16 or M15. And this feels like insurance companies are speaking a different language just to keep the money. And here's the secret, right? It is a language. It's a way of communicating, but it's a standardized language, which means you can learn it and you can adapt to it. And this is where we need to introduce the first tool of the day, which is the payment posting guide. If you're an Hourglass member, you can download that directly from the hub. If you're not, you can go sign up on our website or check the show notes. But that guide is something of a Rosetta Stone, right? You don't need to memorize these codes. You just need a guide next to you to see what those mean. And the language of a denial relies on 2 components, and that's a C-A-R-C, a CARC, and a RARC, R-A-R-C. And I want to break down that code for you. First, you have a CARC, C-A-R-C. Kind of sounds like carcass or like a dead claim. That's not what they mean. It stands for Claim Adjustment Reason Code. And I like to think of the CARC as a headline of a news story. And it tells you the general category of why the payment was adjusted or denied. And the most common one you'll see, the one that shows up on 90% of claims, is CO-45. And if you look at the payment posting guide, you're going to see that CO-45 is defined as charge exceeds the fee schedule. And in plain English, that's the discount. You billed $150. The insurance allowed amount is $50 or is $100. So the $50 between the amount you billed and your allowed amount is $50. That's not a denial you can fight. That's just the contract with the fee schedule that you signed during the credentialing domain. And if you missed the overview of RCM of billing, you can go back to episode 1, and we covered credentialing really early on. But that particular adjustment code is based on the contract you signed. But then you have hostile headlines, right? A common one is CO-16, and this means that the claim lacks information. Basically, that means you forgot something, but there's no other detail there. And this is where providers get really tripped up, right? The headline isn't specific enough to fix the problem. If I just tell you, hey, you forgot something, do you know if you forgot the date of service or the diagnosis code or the wrong NPI? No, you're just guessing, right? There's a million things that could go wrong on a claim that you could be forgetting. And this is where a remittance advice remark code, or a RARC, comes into play. If the CARC is the headline, then the RARC, R-A-R-C, remittance advice remark code, is the article underneath the headline. And that explains some of the details. So you might get a CO-16, hey, you forgot something, paired with an RARC like M15. And if you check the guide, M15 means separately billed services have been bundled, or maybe N362, a specific missing modifier. And so to win this turn in the game, you can't just read the headline and take a guess. You have to read the article. You need both codes to understand the full story. So if you see CO-16 and you resubmit the claim without changing anything, you're just doing the same thing, expecting a different result. You have to find the RARC to know what was missing specifically.
Here's the bottom line. Documentation affects your bottom line. Blueprint, the AI assistant for providers, helps you write faster, better notes that keep insurance happy and money flowing for your practice. Check the show notes for the link to give it a try for free.
So I want you to pause on something pretty dangerous. You might have noticed I used CO and PR before those numbers. And these letters do some pretty heavy lifting too. They're called group codes, and they answer the most important question of all. And that is, who owes the money, right? And if we mess this up, we're not just losing money, but we could be breaking the law or losing patient trust. And that's just a non-starter. So there are 3 big ones that you could memorize, but need to know, and they're bolded in the payment posting guide. Number 1, CO, that stands for contractual obligation. And that means you, the provider, are responsible for writing this off. Now, I know that sounds harsh, but you cannot bill the patient for this. If you see CO, the game stops there for the patient wallet. If you bill a patient for a CO code, that's called balance billing, and it's a breach of your contract. In a lot of states, it's illegal. Number 2, PR, that stands for patient responsibility. This includes things like deductibles, co-pays, and co-insurance. When you see PR, the payer is telling you, we aren't paying this, but you represent the patient, so go collect it from them. And the third that you can see is OA. This stands for other adjustment. You usually see this when there's another insurance involved, like a secondary insurance. Here's a real-world scenario I want you to avoid. Imagine you get a denial code, CO-11, and that means the diagnosis was inconsistent with procedure. Basically, it's a medical necessity denial. Because it starts with CO, the insurance company is saying, you, the provider, messed up the coding, you don't get paid, and the patient doesn't have to pay you. If you're paying attention and your automated system flips that balance to the patient and your patient gets the bill because you made a coding error, that's how you lose patient trust, and it's potentially a compliance issue. So you have to know who owes the money before you send the bill, and you have to understand how these codes work together. So we've covered the why and the what, and let's talk about the how. I want to introduce our second tool, and this is a tool we use every single day, and it's called the Claim Management Spreadsheet. Posting payments is not just about data entry, it's about trend analysis. And I want you to imagine you're sitting at your desk with a stack of EOBs. You see a code you don't recognize. Let's say it's CO-197. I don't have these memorized, and frankly, neither do I, right? Step one, don't guess, look it up. Use Google, use AI, but make sure you verify that information. And let's say you look at it and CO-197 turns out to be prior authorization was absent, meaning you didn't get a prior authorization for the service you provided. Here's a really critical step that separates amateurs from professionals. We need to document it specifically. So in the claim management spreadsheet, don't just put denied, put the code no prior auth. And then I want you to open up your EHR tool and you want to start working through what the solution needs to be. In the claim management spreadsheet, we have date of service, payer, the claim amount, the denial code, the action taken, and the date. If you just write denied on 20 different claims on your spreadsheet, then you just have a pile of unpaid claims. But if you are being specific in how you're documenting denials, at the end of the month, you can look at a filter, you can run a pivot table, you can even have AI do this stuff. And you can look at the spreadsheet and realize that perhaps 40% of your denials are because of prior authorizations. And what does that tell you? It tells you you don't have a billing problem, right? Necessarily. You have an intake problem. It means your front desk or your eligibility process is not checking benefits before the patient arrives. And if you see 40% of your denials are coordination of benefit issues, you know you need to ask your patients if they have a secondary insurance policy. The denial is not defeat, it's data. It's a symptom. And that code tells you the disease so that you can cure it. And that takes you from just doing billing to actually managing your revenue cycle. All right, I want to wrap up our episode today with a quick story from the field to show you what this looks like in practice. We worked with a mental health group in Ohio a while back, and they were convinced that a particular insurance company had stopped paying for crisis sessions. They were furious. They were about to drop the contract. They felt like they were losing about $2,000 a month, which for a small practice is pretty significant. We went in and we looked at the claim management spreadsheet we had built for them, and we sorted it by this particular pair. We looked at the denials, and it was not a blanket no. And it never is, right? It's not a we don't cover this. It was the procedure code was inconsistent with a modifier. They were billing a crisis code, but they weren't attaching the modifier that this payer required to prove that it was a crisis session. We don't have to renegotiate the contract. We don't have to get lawyers involved, and we don't want to sue anybody. We added the modifier to their billing template, and then all of a sudden, the claims start paying again and the denials go away. And that is the power of knowing your trends, having a spreadsheet that you're documenting this on. And this is a good example of why Practice Solutions plays this game. Because this game has rules. And if we follow the rules or we know the rules well enough, we can navigate the game in a way that allows everybody to win, including and especially the patient. So today we talked about recording and decoding denials. This is not the most glamorous square on the board, right? But it's where the money's found. We discussed our two critical tools today that are available through our online learning hub, the Hourglass, the payment posting guide, which is like a Rosetta Stone of sorts, and the claim management spreadsheet, which is a trend tracker. And if you think those would be helpful, and trust me, if you want to resolve and have clarity on your denials, check out the links in the show notes to the Hourglass and stop guessing on your denials and start fixing them, start moving them forward. The next time on the Claim Game, we'll be discussing allowed amounts and fee schedules, which will be pretty exciting. And we're going to talk about how to know if you are actually getting paid what your contract says you should be getting paid, or if you're being shortchanged without realizing it. Until then, keep playing the game, and we will see you next time on the Claim Game. Thanks, everybody. If you enjoyed today's episode of the Claim Game, please take a moment to leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really helps new listeners to find us. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to the Claim Game on your favorite podcast app. Your feedback means so much to us. We want to provide valuable education about revenue cycle management. So if there's something we didn't cover in our topic that was a burning question for you, please let us know so we can try to get you the information you desire. You can find the links to all resources we mentioned in this episode in the show notes. And if you want to dive deeper into our resources, we have 2 places you can do that. First, you can go to our blog at practicesol.com/blog, where we have 8 years of educational blogs. If you want to learn more about what Practice Solutions does, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Just go to practicesol.com to learn more and to connect with one of our awesome people on our team. Thanks for listening. We are Jeremy and Catherine Zug, and this is The Claim Game. See you at the game table next time.